The first time I went to the opera, I was in a minor panic when I heard the chimes start to ring during the intermission. I was hurrying back to my seat when the people I was with asked me, "Well, where are you going?" They said there would be at least three more chimes before we needed to start worrying about being too late. I remember growing up, whenever the phone rang, someone always ran to pick it up. It never occurred to us to just let it ring. Somewhere between growing up and my first time at the opera, it seems like the world lost interest in answering the call. Welcome. Welcome to Sunday Coffee Hour. I'm Stanley Smith. At Sunday Coffee Hour, we talk about everything and nothing. This Sunday, we talked about having a panic attack, how Northwestern Hospital is for fancy people, praying before a meal, having a conversation without the internet, and the trickle down theory of crime. The readings at Washington National Cathedral was from the story of Jonah. Go to the great city and proclaim the message. And from Corinthians, the appointed time is short. The present form of this world is passing by. The gospel reading was about the calling of the disciples. The sermon at Washington National Cathedral was by Joy Nygaard Owens. She preached about fishing. Jo shared her irrational desire as a child to want to fish. When she finally had the opportunity, she was doing just fine until she actually caught a fish. She had no idea the thing would be alive and flopping around. It was it was when her hoping and longing became a reality. It was her come to Jesus moment. Jo said, none of us want to have one of those. Jo said evangelism is the longest four-letter word in the church. For many, being saved is an evacuation plan and not a transformation. Sometimes it seems like the longer people spend in church, the meaner and more judgmental they become. In addition to being mean, they also sometimes have the mistaken idea that they're going to change the world. Jo quoted Bishop Michael Curry, who said, we don't need to live within the bounds of the vagaries of the present and within the dictates of the status quo. We're not going to change the world. We can be transformed, and that will change the world. Truth is, many of us are looking for the evacuation plan instead of a transformation. Many of our beliefs, which we see as, at the center of our lives, are actually at the periphery. We live like we're going to live forever and concern ourselves with many trivial matters. Yet, the world is well vested in the ways of the world and operating efficiently. But we can be fully invested mentally, physically, and spiritually, and there's nothing on the periphery about that. At St. James, the sermon was by Chris Griffin. Chris preached about answering the call and the immediacy of taking action. Growing up, Chris said that it was often his job to answer the phone. And he kind of described himself as being an early form of caller ID. He had instructions depending on who was calling and what to tell them, such as, I'm not home, I'll call later, I don't know where you are, and on and on. Regardless of who's calling, most of what we experience in this life starts as a feeling. Maybe we feel different depending on who's calling, but what's important is that we take note of the immediacy of our feelings and our response. This is how we bring what's on the periphery to the center in our lives. Chris said, no matter who's calling, be swift to pick up the phone and be present in that moment, because the moment is the center of our lives, even though we often say, please call back later. During the pandemic, I was at a socially distanced event at Chicago's University Club with business leaders, culture, and commerce people, trying to navigate our way out of the pandemic narrative. I ran into the director of the Michigan Avenue Association and asked how things were going. She said, terrible. The phones are ringing off the hook. I laughed and she said, no, I'm serious. It's a real problem. People call to tell us about the crime, the bad roads, and about the gum on the sidewalks. I said, well, what do you tell them? And she said, well, we don't tell them anything. We just hang up on them. We know about the crime and about the gum on the sidewalks. At the church I formerly attended, we never had any problems like that because no one ever said anything. Nobody was ever mean or shared dissent. I always said everyone was welcome, whether you were gay, lesbian, or an ex-murderer. It was all okay. Just don't tell anybody that you're a Republican because it'll all be over. We all want to be heard and seen in this lifetime. We all push what's important to the periphery to go along and get along. Nobody ever wants to say anything, so we can just maintain the status quo. It's not an indictment, it's an opportunity. When Martin Luther King started out his ministry for civil rights, he reached out to white people and business leaders. We can all be counterculture by doing the same. Just because you're in the church business, it doesn't mean you're the only route for bringing peace and reconciliation into the world. And all that crime and gum on the sidewalk, well, hey, we want to hear about it. It's okay to talk about it, whether you're the caller or the one picking up the phone. We're not going to change the world, but many of us are experiencing transformation. And you don't need to deposit another 25 cents into the phone for the next 5 minutes to do so. If you would like to join us at Sunday Coffee Hour is every Sunday at 12 noon Central Time on Zoom. I will include my email in the description of this video. I'll be happy to send you an invitation. And I look forward to seeing you very, very soon.